Good morning, dear students. Myself Bhimrao Kulkarni from Bethel English Medium High School, Gangavati. Today I am here to revise the lesson metals and non-metals. Dear students, this lesson for 6 marks. What are the important points you are going to study in this chapter? Are the physical properties of metals and non-metals, and chemical properties of metals, and reactivity series, ionic compounds, corrosion, alloys, etc. Let us study the physical properties of metals. When you study the physical properties of metals, metals are solid in state at room temperature. All metals are solid except mercury. And the second property of metals is metals are hard. Almost all the metals are hard, like copper, magnesium, zinc. There are some metals which are very soft in nature, like lithium, potassium and sodium. And similarly, the next property of metals, metals are lustrous. You know, when you buy the metals which are in a pure state, they have a shining surface. For example, gold, silver, iron. Hence we say metals are lustrous. And the second, third, fourth property is metals are malleable and ductile. Metals are malleable. Malleable means the metal can be beaten into a thin sheet. This property is called malleability. And ductility. Ductility means the metal can be drawn into a thin wire, like a copper wire, which is used in the field of electricity. Here, one important concept I like to tell you, the 1 gram of gold, when you stretch, you can stretch up to 2 kilometers. That means here the gold is highly ductile metal. And the next property of metals, metals have a high melting point. Almost all the metals are high melting point, except the two metals which are given in the bracket here, the gallium and cesium, which have a low melting point. And the metals like gallium and cesium, when you take on hand or palm, they get melted quickly. So coming to the next property of metals, metals have high boiling point. All the metals have a high boiling point, and metals are the good conductor of heat and electricity. And the best conductor of heat, the metals like the silver and copper, and the poor conductor of heat of the metals like the lead and mercury. Metals are the good conductor of electricity, as I said, means they allow the current to pass through. The metals which are used in the field of electricity, like the copper and even the silver, is also used. And one more interesting property of metals, that is about the sonorous. Sonorous means when you drop the metals from certain height, it produces sound. So this property of metal is known as sonorous. When you drop the coin from certain height, or in your school when the bell hits, it produces the sound and you hear it. So this property of metals is known as the sonorous. The next is about the physical properties of non-metals. Non-metals exhibit in solid state, liquid state and gaseous state. The examples for the solid state metals are carbon, sulfur, phosphorus, and the liquid state non-metal is bromine. Bromine is only the non-metal which exists in liquid state. And similarly, gaseous, we come across in our day-to-day life, like oxygen, which is used for breathing. It is a non-metal. And hydrogen, it is also in a gaseous state, which is used for the combustion purpose. And nitrogen is also a non-metal which is in a gaseous state. Here you have to remember very important concept, that is the non-metal which is in a liquid form is bromine. In one more question, they may ask, name the metal which found in liquid, name the non-metal which is found in liquid state, that is bromine. And coming to the next property of physical properties of non-metals, non-metals are soft. As you have studied in the metals, metals are hard, the non-metals are soft. But one non-metal that you are aware, diamond, it is a non-metal and it is a allotropic form of carbon, and it is a hardest non-metal in the nature. And coming to the next property of physical properties of non-metals is about luster. The non-metals are non-lustrous, they are not shining. But iodine is a crystal form of non-metals, and which is shining, and it's known as a luster non-metals. And then the next one is non-metals are not malleable and not ductile. Non-metals cannot be beaten into a thin sheet, or they cannot be drawn into a thin wire. As in metals you observed, the metals are malleable and ductile. They can be beaten into a thin sheet, as well they can be drawn into a thin wire. Almost the opposite of metallic properties found in the non-metals. Hence the non-metal word come, functioning and non-functioning. So coming to the next physical properties of non-metals, non-metals which are solid and have a low melting point. You have observed in the metals, metals have a high melting and boiling point. The non-metals have the low melting and boiling point. And similarly, the non-metals are the bad conductor of heat and electricity. But in the non-metal, one example come, that is graphite, which is a good conductor of electricity and used in the dry cell. And the last one is the non-metals are not sonorous, means they do not produce a sound when you drop from certain height. So this is about the physical properties of non-metals. Next, the chemical properties of metals. In the chemical properties of metals, we are going to study how does the metals react with oxygen, and how does the metals react with water, and how does the metals react with acids. Coming to the first chemical property, that is how does the metals react with oxygen. Metal when react with oxygen forms a metal oxide. For example, here the copper is a metal when it react or when you heat it in presence of air to form a copper oxide. And similarly, here aluminum is a metal when it is heated with oxygen to form a aluminum oxide. And one more interesting chemical properties of the metals with oxygen, that most of the metallic oxides are insoluble in water, but very few non-metals like the sodium oxide and potassium oxide, sodium oxide and potassium oxide, when they react with water, forming their respective hydroxides like sodium hydroxide and potassium hydroxide. And one more interesting character or chemical properties of metallic oxide, the metallic oxides are the amphoteric in nature. Amphoteric in nature, what do you mean by amphoteric oxides? The sodium oxide and aluminum oxide, they can react with both acids and base to form salt and water, are called amphoteric oxides. For example, the aluminum oxide taken here, when it reacts with acids form aluminum chloride, and similarly the same aluminum oxide when it reacts with base, that is the sodium hydroxide, to form a sodium aluminate. So this is about the amphoteric oxides, very interesting and very important for the examination point of view. What do you mean by amphoteric oxides? Amphoteric oxides, example, the aluminum oxide and zinc oxide react with both acids and base to form a salt and water, then it is called amphoteric oxides. Next is about the reactivity. Reactivity of different metals with oxygen is different. Means the different metals react with oxygen in different ways. It depends upon the reactivity of the metals. For example, the sodium is a highly reactive metal. When you keep this sodium in an open place, it becomes oxide and catches the fire. And the next one is the magnesium. It reacts with the oxygen on heating by producing the bright light. And when you come to the next metal, iron, it doesn't glow brightly, but you can heat and it forms the iron oxide. And similarly, if the copper is heated, doesn't burn but forms a black color. You take the copper wire and bring near the flame. It doesn't burn, but it gets a black color coat, that is nothing but copper oxide. And similarly, the metals, you call it as a noble metals like silver, gold, platinum, they never react with oxygen even on heating. Some metals like magnesium, aluminum, zinc, lead forms an oxide layer over it which prevents the further oxidation. That means these metals, when you keep open, they form an oxide layer on them, and these metal oxides are called the self-oxidizing metallic oxides. Next, reaction with water. How does the metals react with water? When a metal reacts with water, forming the respective hydroxide and hydrogen gas is liberated. But some metals react with water, forming their oxides and hydrogen gas get liberated. Here some of the examples like sodium, potassium and calcium. They are reacting with water. The sodium reacts with water to form a sodium hydroxide and hydrogen gas is liberated. You can take a small piece of sodium and put it in water, and the bubbles are coming up. That is nothing but the hydrogen gas is liberated by the reaction of sodium metal with water. And similarly, the potassium is also a highly reactive metal. When it reacts with water to form a potassium hydroxide and hydrogen gas is liberated. And similarly, calcium is also a metal but not so reactive when compared to sodium and potassium, but when it reacts with water, forming calcium hydroxide and hydrogen gas get liberated. And coming to the metals like aluminum and iron, these are the least reactive metals. They do not react with water in a normal condition or cold water. These metals react with water when you pass the steam over the aluminum and iron. They form their respective oxides instead of hydroxides, and hydrogen gas get liberated. So here also you are going to observe the iron which is going to react with water and forming the iron oxide, and hydrogen is getting released. It's very clear that reaction with water, metal when react with water forms their respective oxides or hydroxides and liberating the hydrogen gas. This is very clear, students. Next is about the reactivity of different metals with water in different conditions. All the metals do not react with water in a same condition. As we have studied in the reaction of metals with oxygen, here also there are some metals which are highly reactive, as I showed above. The sodium and potassium, they react with water vigorously and produce a hydrogen gas, and sometimes it catches fire also. So then you said that the potassium react violently with the cold water to form a sodium hydroxide and hydrogen and get fire or catches the fire, very clear. Next, calcium is less reactive when compared to sodium, and when this calcium react with water, means normal water, forming a calcium hydroxide, and this liberates the hydrogen, but it doesn't catches the fire, unlike the sodium reacting with the cold water. Coming to the next metals which are less reactive compared to above metals, magnesium reacts with the hot water to form a magnesium hydroxide, and hydrogen gas is liberated. The reactivity of metals differs from metals to metal. Here the metals like aluminum, iron and zinc, which are least reactive metals, they do not react with cold water, hot water, they react with the steam. When you pass a steam over the red hot iron, zinc and aluminum, it forms their oxides and the liberation of hydrogen gas. And there are some metals, they do not react with water even when you pass the steam, like the silver, gold. They, copper, lead, they do not react with water even if you pass the steam. Next is about reaction of metals with acids. What happens when the metals react with acids? Remember students, always when a metal react with the acids, forming salt and hydrogen gas is liberated. Example, the magnesium is a metal which is going to react with hydrochloric acid to form a salt, that is magnesium chloride, and hydrogen gas is liberated. And the other examples are there here. Aluminum, when it reacts with hydrochloric acid to form a aluminum chloride plus hydrogen gas is liberated. And similarly, the zinc is a metal, when it reacts with hydrochloric acid to form a zinc chloride and hydrogen gas is liberated. And one more example here, that is iron, when it reacts with hydrochloric acids to form a ferric chloride plus hydrogen gas is liberated. What it confirms, what it clears, when a metal reacts with the acids, definitely it forms the respective salts plus hydrogen gas is getting released. And here we have written the metals in the increasing order of the reactivity, like magnesium, aluminum, zinc and iron. Which one is more reactive? Magnesium is more reactive compared to aluminum, and aluminum is more reactive compared to zinc. Compared to zinc, iron is less reactive. Here down the literature given, the reactivity varies from metals to metal. For the above metals, the decreasing order of reactivity is magnesium is a highly reactive, the next comes aluminum, zinc and iron. And one more interesting point, when you study about reaction of metals with acids, as I told, any metal when react with acids, forming the salt and hydrogen gas is liberated. But in the case of nitric acid, the metal reacting with it doesn't evolve the hydrogen gas. The reason is very simple. The nitric acid is a strongly oxidizing agent. Here it's given, the hydrogen gas is not evolved when metal react with the nitric acid, because it is a strong oxidizing agent and it oxidizes the hydrogen. Hydrogen which is produced in the reaction immediately obtain the oxygen and to become the water, and is itself reduced to oxides of nitrogen. For example, copper is a metal which is going to react with the nitric acid. You are observing the formation of salt, that is copper nitrate is a salt. As well, the water is formed and nitrogen dioxide getting released instead of hydrogen gas. And there are some metals which do not react with the acids, like noble metals like silver, gold, all they are called least reactive metals, they never react with the acids. So coming to the next property of metals is about reaction of metals with the metal salt solution, very important. How does the metal react with metal salt solution? Metal salt solution like the magnesium sulfate, so copper sulfate. Copper sulfate is a metal salt. Metal salt, example here taken as a copper sulfate. How does the metal react with the metal salt? Here you have a metals like magnesium, zinc, iron. All these metals when react with metal salts, the displacement reaction takes place. What is displacement reaction? Displacement reaction means the more reactive element or metal displaces, the less reactive element or metal from its compound is called displacement reaction. You have studied in the chapter chemical reactions and equations, the types of chemical reactions, where you have studied the decomposition reaction, combination reaction, redox reaction, displacement reaction. Here the displacement reaction is explained. Magnesium is a metal. When it is going to react with a metal salt, copper sulfate is a metal salt because copper is a metal and sulfate it's a non-metal. When the magnesium react with the copper sulfate salt, metal salt, form a magnesium sulfate and copper, means the copper which is present in the form of copper sulfate displaced by magnesium. The place of copper occupied by magnesium in the product side you are observing. This is nothing but the displacement reaction. And another example here, the zinc plus copper sulfate. Zinc is a metal. When it reacts with the metal salt, the place of copper occupied by the zinc in the product side. Zinc sulfate plus copper is getting displaced from the copper sulfate solution. And similarly, very familiar example, since from 8th standard you are aware that taking the iron nail and put it into the copper sulfate solution, after some time the copper deposited on iron nail in the form of the brown powder. This is also the example for displacement reaction. Iron react with the copper sulfate and forming a ferrous sulfate plus copper is released. It's very clear the displacement reaction takes place when a metal react with the metal salt. Next very important concept in this chapter is about reactivity series. What do you mean by reactivity series? Reactivity series means the arranging the metals in the decreasing order of their reactivity. The metals are arranged in the decreasing order of their reactivity. That means the metal from highly reactive to low reactive. When you list these metals, that is nothing but the reactivity series. The reactivity series metals are classified into most reactive metal, medium reactive metals and least reactive metals. Example, here you are observing the most reactive metals which found on the top of the reactivity series like potassium, sodium, calcium, magnesium, aluminum. And the medium reactivity series metals are the elements like zinc, iron, lead. Hydrogen is a metal, it exhibits both the properties. Copper which comes under the least reactive metals. From here copper, mercury, silver and gold, these four elements coming under the least reactivity series. Most reactivity series from potassium to aluminum, medium reactivity series from zinc to lead, and the least reactivity series which proceed from copper to aurum, means gold. Next, how do metals and non-metals react? Very important. Here you have to understand what is meant by metals. Metals are the electropositive elements. When they become electropositive, when they lose their valency electrons. Metals and non-metals reactivity depend on the losing and gaining of valency electron. You know valency electron, what do you mean by valency electrons? The electrons which are present in the outermost orbit are called valency electrons. Example here, the sodium. Sodium is a metal, it is positively charged, hence it is called electropositive element. The atomic number of this sodium is 11. When you write its electronic configuration, EC means the electronic configuration. In the first orbit, you get the 2 electrons, and in the second orbit, you get 8 and 1 electron. That means the total number of electrons in the sodium is 11. The valency of this sodium is 1. In order to retain positive charge, it must lose 1 electron. When it loses 1 electron, the number of electrons become 10 and the number of protons in the nucleus, in the nucleus the number of protons become 10 and electrons become 11. As a result of which, by losing 1 electron, it get the positive charge. Say sodium atomic number is 11, 2, 8, 1. This electron, when the sodium loses, the number of electrons become 2 and 8, 10, but the protons remains as a 11, the proton positive sign, hence the sodium get positive charge. And coming to the one more example, that is magnesium. Magnesium is also electropositive element. Why it is called electropositive element? When you write its electronic configuration 282, the valency of this magnesium is 2. When the 2 electron lost by the magnesium, the number of electrons become 10, but the protons, the number of electrons, when it gains the 2 electrons, when it lose the 2 electrons, it become the 10 and the number of protons remains 12, hence it get a positive charge. And magnesium both lose the valency electron. By losing the valency electron, they get the positive charge. And coming to non-metals, what are non-metals? Non-metals are very simple. They are called electronegative elements. Why they are called electronegative elements? They gain the electrons. When the metals lose the electron, non-metals gain the electrons. By gaining the electrons, they retain the negative charge. So the examples here very clear. Chlorine, the atomic number of this chlorine is 17. And when you write the electronic configuration of this sodium, you are writing 287. In order to get the octet electronic configuration, this chlorine need 1 electron. When it gain 1 electron, the number of electrons become 18. Here you are observing 16 plus 2, 18 electrons. When it gain 1 electrons, 18 electrons, but protons remains as a 17 in the atom of the chlorine, and it gets the negative charge. Hence we say non-metals are electronegative elements because they lose they gain the electrons, and here the metals lose the electrons. Any metal when lose the electrons, then it gains a positive sign. The non-metals when gain the electrons, and it becomes negative charge. So here the example for the formation of a compound called sodium chloride. Sodium chloride is a common salt every day we use in order to get the food taste. How this sodium chloride molecule is formed? The sodium chloride molecule is formed by the combination of metals and non-metals. Due to the transfer of electron from metals to the non-metals. This can be explained with a diagrammatic representation. As I told you, sodium is a metal, and the atomic number of the sodium is 11, and when you write its electronic configuration 281, in order to attain octet electronic configuration in its outermost orbit, it has to lose one electron. When the sodium lose one electron, and this electron taken by the chlorine, by losing one electron, the sodium become positive charge, and the chlorine, here you are observing its atomic number is 17 and its electronic configuration is 287, and immediately it require one electron to get a positive charge or to obtain octet electronic configuration. The electron which is released by the sodium get by the chlorine, and the electronic configuration become 288. Here you are observing the dot of this electron, and this electron is going to reach to the chlorine, and it obtained octet electronic configuration 2, 4, 6, 8, as a result of which the compound formed is sodium chloride. The same thing given in the literature here. The atomic number of sodium is 11, its electronic configuration 281, it has a 1 valency electron, it loses 1 electron to form a sodium ion. The atomic number of chlorine is 17 and its electronic configuration is 287. By gaining 1 electron, 1 valency electron, it gets the electronic configuration like 288, and it gains 1 electron from the sodium and negatively charged ions. Then the force of attraction between the sodium and chlorine, that helps in the formation of a compound or a molecule called sodium chloride. Exactly, it is not a sodium chloride molecule, it's a aggregates of positive and negative charged ions. One more example here, formation of magnesium chloride molecule. Magnesium chloride, the atomic number of this magnesium is 12 and its electronic configuration is 282. So that means the valency electrons of this magnesium is 2. When you write the molecular formula of this magnesium chloride is magnesium chloride. So that means the chlorine have its atomic number 17, and when you write its electronic configuration, it gets 287. So here the 2 chlorine molecules are there. The 2 valency electrons from magnesium gained by each chlorine atoms and to form a magnesium chloride. Here you are observing the diagram showing the transfer of valency electrons from magnesium to the chlorine. The 2 valency electrons which get transferred, 1 each to the chlorine and forming a magnesium chloride. So the same literature is there here. The atomic number of magnesium is 12, its electronic configuration is 282. It has a 2 valency electron, it loses 2 valency electron, 1 valency electron to 1 chlorine and another 1 valency electron to the another chlorine, and to get the sodium magnesium chloride, and it builds the force of attraction between the positive and negative ions, and as a result of which the magnesium chloride molecule is going to form. Next, the magnesium chloride and sodium chloride, both are called the ionic compounds. What are ionic compounds? How you are going to write the meaning of ionic compounds? The ionic compounds are those which are formed by transfer of valency electron between the metals and non-metals, called the ionic compounds. The same definition is here. ionic compounds are compounds formed by the transfer of electrons from a metals to a non-metals. Then what are the properties of ionic compounds? The four important properties of ionic compounds. They are formed by the transfer of valency electrons from metals to the non-metals. Ionic compounds always formed by the transfer of valency electrons from metals to the non-metals. And the second one, they are crystalline solid. You have seen the common salt, which is called as a crystal. And next one, the ionic compounds are soluble in water, means inorganic solvent, but they do not soluble in the organic solvents such as petrol, carbon tetrachloride, benzene, etc. And the last property of this metallic compounds conduct electricity in a molten state. Remember, in a solid state, they do not conduct electricity. They conduct electricity only in molten state. Next part of the metals and non-metals is occurrence of metals. Remember, metals extracted from the minerals. What are the sources for these minerals? Our earth crust is a major source of minerals. Most of the metals we obtained from our earth crust through the minerals. And similarly, water is also a source of many metals like the sulfides, so proteins, the potassium, magnesium, and calcium. They are in the form of salts. So ocean is also a source of many metals. And here in the occurrence of metals, the three important definitions you have to remember, that is minerals. What are minerals? Minerals are the elements or the compounds found naturally in the earth crust are called minerals. And next is ores. Ores are the minerals from which metals can be extracted profitably, called ores. All minerals are not ores, but all ores are minerals. Very simple. The difference between minerals and ore: minerals have some objectionable impurities, but ores doesn't have any objectionable impurity. This is the main difference you have to remember between the minerals and ores. And next one is gangue. Gangue is nothing but the impurities present in the ore. It may be the soil or rocky materials. When you dug the ore from the earth crust, immediately it has the impurities in the form of sand or soil, then it is called as a gangue. So next, what are the different steps which are followed in the extraction of metals? The important steps which are followed in the extraction of metals are concentration of the ore. Concentration of ore can be done by physical or chemical methods. And next, reduction. It may be following the heating of the ore. And last one is purification of metals. It's nothing but refining. And concentration of the ore, it's nothing but removal of gangue, means impurities, as I told you, like sand and soil. Yes, what are the steps involved in the extraction of metals from their ores? So this is the chart which is given in your textbook that you have to remember in a easier way. First, you have to write the ore, and next you have to classify the metals into three groups: highly reactive metals, medium reactive metals, and least reactive metals. Here the same thing done: metals of high reactivity, metals of medium reactivity, metals of low reactivity. Coming to the metals of high reactivity, how you get the pure metal which are standing in the place of metals of high reactivity? By following the step, that is electrolysis of molten ore. means the ore which is in a molten condition, when you pass the electric current, you will get the pure metal. And second one is metals of medium reactivity. The metals of medium reactivity, they are also found in combined state. They may have the ores of these metals may have the carbonate or sulfide. When your ore have the carbon or carbonate, then it is called carbonate ore. If your ore have the sulfur, then it is called as a sulfide ore. How you can get the metal from carbonate ore? The carbonate ore must be converted into oxides of metals. This can be done by strong heating in absence of oxygen. So then this process is known as calcination. One more question. What is calcination? Calcination is a process in which the carbon ores are heated strongly in absence of oxygen or with a limited supply of oxygen. Then this process is known as calcination. Coming to the sulfide ore, if your ore have the sulfur, then it should be converted into metal oxide. How you are going to convert the sulfide ore into metal oxide or oxides of metals? By roasting process. What do you mean by roasting? Roasting is a process in which the sulfide ore is heated strongly in presence of excess air. In presence of excess air, then it is called roasting. There is a small difference, minute difference between the calcination and roasting. Both are heating process. One done in a limited supply of air, then it is calcination. One process done in a presence of excess air, then it is called roasting. Both calcination and roasting help to convert the carbonates and sulfide ore to oxides of metals. When the oxides of metals obtained, then the oxide from the metal removed. The removal of oxygen from the metals, it's nothing but a reduction of metals. Reduction to metals. And whatever the metal obtained in this step, which is subjected for refining process. This is how you get the metals of medium reactivity series. And coming to the third part, that is metals of low reactivity. You have seen in the reactivity series, there are some metals which are unreactive or least reactive. Almost the unreactive or least reactive metals have the ore containing the sulfur. Hence you call it as a sulfide ore. And sulfide ore, as I told you, how you convert the sulfide ore into metal oxide? Again by roasting. By roasting, the sulfide ore is converted into metal, directly into a metal, and then it is subjected for the refining, purification. So then this is the step you follow, or which involves the extraction of metals from their ore. Next, one by one, how you are going to extract the metals of low reactivity series. Metals of low reactivity series always have the sulfide ore. They can be converted into metals by heating strongly in presence of air, nothing but roasting. The same literature example is there here. Mercury is obtained from its ore. Cinnabar is the ore of mercury. When you heat this mercury in presence of excess air, it forms a mercuric oxide. The further mercuric oxide continued heating to form a mercury, and oxygen is liberated. The very simple example, HGS is a cinnabar, the mercuric sulfide, when it is heated strongly in presence of excess air, form a mercuric oxide. This mercuric oxide further continued heating to form a mercury. And to understand one more example he has taken in your textbook, that is copper sulfide. Copper sulfide is also sulfide ore, which is also separated by heating strongly in presence of excess air. What is the difference you observe between this and this? See here, the copper sulfide, when it is heated strongly, you will get the metal oxide, copper oxide and sulfur dioxide gases get liberated. Here still the copper sulfide is there in the product, and this copper oxide again react with the copper sulfide on heating. The excess copper is converted as a CCU copper, and the sulfur dioxide gas is formed. Next, extraction of metals in the middle of the activity series. As I told you, there are some metals which are there in the middle of your reactivity series. They found in a combined state as well as a free state. And these metals which are found in the middle of the reactivity series may have the impurities in the form of carbonates or sulfide ores. Again, if they have the carbonate form, immediately you have to follow the calcination method. If they have a sulfide form, then you have to follow the roasting method. The same thing is there here. It is easier to obtain metals from their oxides than from their sulfide carbonates. That means the metals in the middle of the reactivity series like zinc, iron, lead are found as oxides, sulfides or carbonate ores. Here, if the ore is in a sulfide form, roasting method is followed. Roasting is a process in which the sulfide ore is converted into metal oxide by heating strongly in presence of air. Then you get a metal oxide. Example, zinc sulfide react with oxygen in presence of air. When you heat, the zinc oxide and sulfur dioxides are formed. And suppose your ore is a carbonate form, then you have to follow the calcination process. In the calcination process, the zinc carbonate, when you heat strongly in absence or limited supply of oxygen, it is converted into zinc oxide. So in both the case, you got metal oxide but not the metal. Further, the metal oxide reduced by using a reducing agent. The reducing agent like the carbon. Here you are observing the zinc oxide obtained here, when it is making react with the carbon to form as pure zinc plus carbon monoxide. So next is one more. The reducing agent can be used to reduce the metal oxide into metal. Example, he has taken the manganese dioxide. This manganese dioxide heated with aluminum. Aluminum is used as a reducing agent, and you will get the manganese, pure manganese and aluminum oxide. It is just like the exothermic reaction where the heat is liberated. That means it also takes place a displacement reaction. By displacement reaction, you can reduce the metal oxide into metal, not only by using carbon. You can, by following the displacement reaction, the metal oxide can be converted into metal. And one more very important concept, that is about thermite reaction. Asked in the previous exam, what is thermite reaction? Thermite reaction, very clear here. Iron oxide react with aluminum. Iron oxide react with aluminum, or the reaction between the metal oxide, iron oxide and the aluminum, which is used in joining the railway track. Used in joining the railway track. You have seen the railway track, which is not formed of single piece. The many pieces of metals, iron, they are joined. How they are joined means by a thermite reaction. So then, what is thermite reaction? the reaction between iron oxide and aluminium to form aluminium oxide, and which is used in making or joining the railway track and joining other metallic spare parts, then this reaction is known as thermite reaction. Very important for the examination point of view. So here, as I told you, there is a joining of a railway track. The two pieces of a railway track which are going to join with the help of a thermite reaction, the reaction between iron oxide and aluminium, which is used in joining the railway track. The picture you are observing, this process is known as thermite reaction. Yes, the last one, the extraction of metals at the top of the activity series. As I told, the metals which are found on the top of the activity series, they are highly reactive, means they do not found in free state. They always combine with oxygen. You cannot reduce those metal oxide into metal by using carbon as a reducing agent. The reason is very simple. These highly reactive metals have a more affinity towards the oxygen. Even if you use carbon as a reducing agent, you cannot separate them from oxide form. The highly reactive metals like potassium, sodium, calcium, aluminium, they can be obtained by electrolytic reduction. By passing the electric current, you can convert the metal oxides into metal. Next. So next, refining of metals. The removal of impurities from the metals to obtain a pure metal. Very important definition. What is refining of metals? Removal of impurities from the metals. After obtaining the metal, still it contains any impurities, can be removed by a process called refining of metals, and this refining of metals again done by electrolytic refining. Electrolyte is used here as a copper sulfate solution, and here you have a impure copper anode, and the pure copper act as a cathode, and these terms are connected to the battery. When a current is passed through the electrolyte solution, the pure copper moves towards the cathode and it deposits on the cathode plate, and impure impurities which come towards the anode and which is deposited here, which is known as a anode mud. Yes, next is about corrosion. Already we have studied regarding corrosion in the chapter chemical equations and reactions. The metals get damaged due to certain substances like carbon dioxide, sulfur dioxide, air or moisture. Then this process is known as corrosion. Here he has taken the three examples, how the silver get damaged, how the copper get damaged, and how the iron get damaged. Very simple. The silver get the black color when it come in contact with sulfur dioxide which is present in the atmosphere, and similarly the copper which get a green coat due to the reaction with carbon dioxide that is present in the atmosphere. And similarly, as you have seen, when the construction of building done, the iron bought from the market and kept in an open place for few days, there is a appearance of a brown chocolate color layer on it. This is nothing but the moisture which makes the iron rust. The same activity is there here. So here the rust is found for this. This is because of the availability of both air and moisture, and the reaction happened, the rusting of iron done. Next, how you are going to prevent the corrosion? There are many ways you can prevent the corrosion, like the applying oil or grease, applying paint, galvanization, coating, a thin metal by electroplating and by alloying. You have seen the doors, windows are coated with a paint in order to prevent them from rusting, and oil and greasing done for vehicles or chains in order to prevent them from the rusting. And galvanization is one metal is coated with another metal. The zinc is less reactive, which is used for the galvanization, and coating other metals to the one metals, that is nothing but tinning. And by electroplating, coating is less reactive metals like chromium also coated over some other metals to prevent from the rusting. And alloying, very important. What is alloy? Alloy is a homogeneous mixture of two or more metals or metals and non-metals is called alloy. We use the alloy in our day-to-day life like stainless steel, bronze, etc. All these are the examples for the alloy. What is the importance of this alloy? Alloy changes the physical properties of a pure metal, and it makes the metal durable. So here you have some of the alloys like steel, which is composed of the iron and carbon. Stainless steel articles which are used in our home like glass, tumblers, steel plates, etc., and which are made up of the stainless steel is made up of iron, carbon, cobalt, nickel, and the iron, the brass is a alloy of this copper. The copper and zinc is a combination to form the brass, which is used in the field of electronics. And bronze, copper and tin, the combination of copper and tin forms the bronze example, the bronze metals. When during the Olympic or any game, the gold medal, silver medal, bronze medals obtained, this is nothing but the alloy. And solder is also one of the alloy, which is made by the combination of lead and tin. Say, students, all these are the important concept that I explained from the chapter metals and non-metals, and this lesson is very important for the examination point of view because it carries 6 marks. If you follow all the points what I explained in the form of slides, definitely I hope you will understand, and thanks for listening. Thank you.